Large cappuccino. Orders up.
Welcome back to the Athlete Cafe. Woo. That was a little too official, I think. I don't know if I liked that.
Welcome back to the Athlete Cafe.
Oh, gosh. Doing the intros is the toughest part. Ugh, okay.
I think of like the whole job.
I think of like the whole episode and everything. It's the toughest part.
Not the planning, not the figuring out content.
Nope.
Not
just
actually
the,
doing it.
Just
It's
the
that
intro.
first 4 words.
And everyone always tosses up who gets to do it, so.
And then we all look at our fearless leader.
Me. So welcome back. Nice. No, how is everybody?
Good, it's Friday.
It is Friday. That's
Like
exciting.
a summer Friday, too.
I know. It's about to be like a straight 95 degrees here in Ohio for the next week and a half.
Yeah,
so.
remember when it was 50 and rainy on Monday?
Yes. Yep. Yes, that was weird. I don't know why I did that.
Because
Hopefully.
it's Ohio.
Because it's Ohio. Yes. So it'll be nice and toasty. Everyone that works at Sharp and Pearly has a pool to go to of some sort, except for me. So that's exciting.
So ready for a good pool day. Get out there.
Oh, yes.
All of my clients have been like, I've asked them, a majority of girls that I work with, they're like, I was like, what'd you do today? I went and laid out today.
Well, the UV was
Yep.
9. Yeah, it's like, I swear I have never paid attention to the UV one time in my life, and these girls have educated me so much. They're like, this is
Yeah.
how you have to do it, and this is how you don't get burnt while you're doing like, they've got
It's
it down to a
strategy.
science, and I appreciate that. Like, and this is, if it's above this, you have to apply your sunscreen every 30
Right.
minutes. I'm
Oh
like,
my
at
gosh,
least
that's
we're wearing
funny.
sunscreen.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like,
that's
but
good.
I'm impressed with the dedication to the cause.
When you're in Ohio and you only have like a certain number of like actual nice days to get out
Right.
there,
You
though,
have to
gotta
like
have a
fully
system.
capitalize
Yeah.
on them. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I only pay attention to the UV when I'm on vacation. I feel like the UV in Ohio, even if it's high, it's like not the same as like a UV in like Florida.
Yeah.
Obviously for
Yeah.
certain reasons, but
And
always feel like
mostly
it
I
doesn't
only pay
matter.
attention when I go on vacation so I don't burn myself to a
Correct.
crisp the first
And
day
can't
and
go
then feel
out.
miserable the
Ruin
rest
it,
of
yep.
the trip.
Correct. So
The important things.
yes, hopefully it is warm in summertime wherever you're listening from. But with the idea of summer, we wanted to kind of talk about the idea of just end of seasons, more or less the thought of like this end of spring sports, end of school years, whether it's 8th grade, high school, college, and just some of the transitions that people might be going through with, I mean, yes, there's an idea of transitioning onto the next level for most kids, but there are some kids out there who are not continuing their sport and kind of having that like end of sport career type of moments. And so we just thought it would be helpful to kind of just shed some light on that conversation. Not to say that it's not talked about, but I think just normalizing it hopefully and just sharing our own experiences with our end of sport career and then giving some tips and tricks on how to maybe manage that or some other things to be thinking about.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sweet.
Cool. I feel like all three of us have like very different end of sport experiences. So I don't know. Should I go first?
Yeah,
or-
I was going to say, I also
Lead us
want
off.
you to go first because I want to make sure that we have time to talk about yours.
Yeah.
Because I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day where she felt weird for feeling the way that you did, and you can get into it. but
Yes.
You're not alone, so.
Correct. So, and again, we've shared all of our backgrounds numerous times, but I played volleyball, played high school volleyball, just volleyball in high school, 4 years of varsity, and I played travel club volleyball at the high level, like national elite level, from age 11 to 18. And then I went on to play Division I college volleyball at St. Francis for 4 years. And so volleyball was like my life, my lived, breathed it amongst academics and social life, but that athlete identity was pretty strong. And so by time I got through college, I always say was kind of where I started struggling mentally the most. And just throughout the different events that happened, you know, I loved my 4 years. I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it was tough. And so by my senior year, I was thrilled to be done with volleyball.
She had a countdown
Yes.
going on.
I guess not volleyball, but just like the idea of the coordinated sports, like
Yeah.
all of that type of thing. I don't know if anyone that's listening has ever heard, but there's a term in the I guess probably college, I don't know about as high school as much, but to be a NARP,
Ooh.
which
Hi, Laura.
is an acronym for being a non-athletic regular person. So our joke on campus at the time was like all the NARPs, all the people who didn't play sports, like super jealous of them. They didn't have to like get up for lifts. They didn't have to do all this stuff. And so me and my roommate and some other friends on my team were like, senior year, we're so excited to be NARPs because within the volleyball season, you know, we finished our season in the fall. And so I had the winter and spring as time to be a regular college student, which was, was so excited for. So, but I always explain it of like, because people ask me like, do you miss playing volleyball? Do you miss college volleyball? And I'm like, I don't miss the like 6 a.m. lifts, the 3-hour practices, the running the sprints, the hard workouts. Like it was good when it was happening, but like I don't miss any of that organized part of it. But I miss volleyball. Like I miss the competition. I miss that high level that I played at. And so like I still do that now at some capacity with like adult leagues and everything. So I still
go to our TikTok.
Yeah.
A recently posted video of Emily mic'd up.
Yes, playing some sand volleyball. So it's cool that Cleveland has a really good community for volleyball within the adult leagues. So I definitely have created a really cool community since coming home of being able to play either for really good fun or at some competitive level. So I was very excited, and hopefully nobody listening that knows my volleyball career was a part of that with me, like takes offense to that. But like, I know a lot of my teammates kind of felt similarly, and it's a weird feeling to be excited to be done because you've just put so much time into all of that. And like, I had some teammates who went on to play professional volleyball, and I was just like, no, thank you. I had some friends who took their 5th year if they had like a red shirt or an injury or something. And I was like, you couldn't have paid me money to take a 5th year, no matter what happened. So I think my perspective on that was very different of like, I saw my ending coming and I was counting the days down, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And it didn't make me any less invested like my senior year or anything like that. Like I didn't feel burnt out. I was just like ready for that next phase and felt like I put that time into things in my career.
Yeah, I have one athlete that I'm working with right now. She plays softball, and she actually is going to play at the collegiate level. She's already committed. She's actually really, really excited to go play for the college that she's playing for. I'm a little salty about it because it's a rival of my college that I went to, so like I'll forgive her one of these days. But she could not have been more ready for her high school season to end. Like just that dynamic, that team just wasn't necessarily a bad team. It just wasn't a good fit for her. And so I think she was the same way where she's like, I actually still really love this sport. I can't wait to keep playing, but I'm ready for this phase of it to be over. And I was like, that's okay.
Right.
Doesn't make you less of an athlete. Doesn't make you love your sport left. It just means you need to move on from this phase of it that you're in. Yeah.
I think that idea of phases is so important, and just like understanding being present in that phase, but also realizing that like that identity piece of like this, the sport is part of you, but you can ebb and flow in it, and it's not like your entire identity like it sometimes feels like as you're growing up. But
yeah, I think that definitely like comes with growth too, right? Of like being stuck in this environment and like feeling like you have to make it work, and then recognizing like, no, like I'm done. I've done what I need to do here, and like there are the next steps. So that's definitely like a lot of growth that we see with athletes, which is really cool. To be able to recognize when it's time to move on.
To be like, okay, I've gotten what I've got out of it. I've learned the lessons I was meant to learn, and now it's time to go apply those things to other aspects of my life.
Yeah. So if you're excited to be done with your sport in any way, I feel for you.
We're cheering for you for that one. Yeah,
that's exciting and that's amazing. So that's my story.
Do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I can go.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's kind of funny because mine was like the exact opposite experience. I think there was definitely days throughout my college career where I was like very ready for this to be done. And I was like, oh my gosh, I like can't even get through this practice. The next 4 hours of standing out on the softball field, like I'm ready to go home. But I was a COVID senior, COVID end to my college career.
A single tear rolls down my cheek.
So I know, like, I kind of touched on my intro episode, I guess, when I gave my sport background. But I played hockey and softball all 4 years of college, and then obviously senior year, COVID hit for me, and I guess it was almost like an injury where it was like, you had no control over it. You didn't know it was coming. Like, I didn't know that was my last season or my last game or anything like that. It just kind of hit, and there was nothing we could do to control that, which I think was the hardest part. Was it wasn't like we played our last game, we gave it our all, like we knew it was coming. Like, we were right on the cusp of our season. So for hockey, we had made it to nationals all 4 years for hockey, or I guess all 4 years if we would have gone.
Yeah.
We came in second one year, and like my senior year, we were supposed to win it. Like, we were ranked first going in. We were ready to go. It was our year. And then literally, like, I think it was the week before we were supposed to leave for nationals.
Good.
They got canceled.
Good.
COVID hit, and the tournament was canceled. So we didn't get to go and finish off our season, which was very sad.
Yeah.
Terrible.
It was an awful ending. Like, we had worked so hard, and we were super ready for it. So that was hard. And then that week that we were getting ready for nationals for hockey, we were also in Florida for spring training for softball. So like, I took the bus down with the team. We were in Florida. I was flying back to meet the hockey team, whatever, whole big thing. But we were getting ready for our spring training, and then we had to come home from Florida, and literally like that day they announced that season was canceled for the division that we were in. So my entire senior season for softball we didn't even get, which was hard because that was like no senior day, no like none of those lasts that a lot of athletes talk about.
My brother
like,
was the same because he played a spring sport. He was like, he had
like,
just gotten ready, all the gear got issued,
Yep.
and then coach called in all the seniors and was like, actually, his coach told the seniors first and says, I'm about ready to call the team and let them all know, but I wanted to tell you guys first that you're not getting your senior season. And
Well, I feel like I've obviously heard kids and I guess more of the older kids talk about that, but I don't think I've ever heard of a person lose 2 sports.
Yeah.
So it was like my life.
I don't know if you win or lose on that one, but you got 2.
Got 2. But similar to Emily, like you were saying, like I was an athlete my whole life. Like that was like the major part of my identity. That was like all I did. Like anybody that knew me, it was like I was the athlete, like I was playing sports. And so that's why I think it's super important when we work with our athletes to talk about their identities outside of it. Because when I had that like sudden, all right, you're not an athlete anymore, like that's kind of how it felt in those moments. I had no idea who I was and what I wanted to do. So it was really, really hard. And I think honestly, I probably still haven't coped with it properly in the best way. But it was like I lost 2 seasons, the whole athletic part of my life, and then like the world was also shut down at the same time. So it was like I had nothing, right? Like the rinks were shut down, like everything. So that was really, really hard. But thankfully I'm able to play again now, which is really fun. I'm slowly finding like that athletic part of myself again, and it's like the highlight of my week, getting out there and playing. So it comes back full circle. Definitely a different experience from
for sure
how you were feeling.
Well, and I think that's a good point to kind of lump like that COVID season, which hopefully will never happen again for any athletes in any capacity, but the injury piece of it too. And I know we've talked on injury and just like having that taken away, your sports season or that period of time taken away because of injury. And I think that is such an important piece of like making sure you make other parts of your life that priority, and making sure that like no matter what, because that's nothing that we can control and nothing that you can prepare for. And I know you've talked a lot about injury and had probably majority of the injured athletes we've seen. So those conversations are so tough. And being able to manage that and just kind of like learn how to cope, because I don't think many people know how to when you aren't expecting it.
Yeah, and I had, a very interesting perspective on an injury because my injury kind of happened in phases. I didn't have this like one really tragic fall, or I didn't have one really tragic injury. At the end I did, but mine, I had an ankle injury. I've had now 2 surgeries on it, bone transplant, very reconstructive, kind of surgery on it. But the first time I went to the doctor for it I was noticing the pain. It was getting unbearable, so I went and got it checked out, and my doctor, who I think now I wonder actually if doctors tell athletes different things, but he gave me the green light of if you can tolerate the pain, you won't do any more damage on it. And I was like, sweet, like I don't care how bad it hurts, I'm still going, I'm still doing this. And then the problem happened for me where I originally went in for pain, that was actually feeling okay, but the pain had spread to another area, and I just didn't pay attention to it. I was already in a boot. I was already like, okay, I take the boot off when I go to practice, but like I'm not doing any more damage. So I just was like, I knew it was happening, but I just like didn't honestly listen to my body the way I should have, because I said it shouldn't be hurting here, so I'm going to pretend it's not. So I definitely had that, like, I was limited, but I didn't realize that it was going to be like this big thing until I had my big fall. And, you know, then it came down to, well, something's going to have to happen if you want to continue to do this. And so I had the original injury and I kind of pushed through it. And then I had this idea where they're like, well, you have to have surgery. And if you have this surgery, you're out your entire senior year. And I was like, oh. So I, like, had the injury and didn't know it was coming, but then I had the injury and I did know it was coming. And it sucked. Like, it really sucked. Like, it wasn't even, and it was hard because my dad tells this story where I'm sitting there on, you know, the consulting table. The doctor's, like, looking at my foot and he's looking at the x-rays and the MRI, and he looked at me and he's like, I can make it better. He's like, I can make it so you're not in pain anymore. He's like, but you're going to be out your entire senior year. And my dad was like, you had this, like, brief moment of relief on your face because you weren't going to be in pain anymore. And then you heard and processed the second half of his sentence. And he was like, and it went right back to, like, this devastation. And I remember, like, kind of wishing that there was, like, a camera on me so I could see, like, the swing of it.
It's your brain,
But then it was hard because I was still going to practice. I was still with my teammates. I was still watching them perform and compete and just kind of sitting on the side and watching it. And then it was also that whole thing of, like, I was still active in it and I tried, but then I wasn't. And it just was kind of like a slow burn of an exit out of it. And that hurt in its own way. And then I had the experience of 3 years later being like, I'm actually going to do gymnastics again. I'm actually going to go back to this.
Come back.
And so I, you know, did it my last 2 years in college. And then I had, like, the traditional, this is your last meet. You have to go through all of it. So I had, like, both sides of it and nothing.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. And so honestly, one was not worse than the other. They were just so different that they almost feel like two completely different lives that I lived in that. And I just remember my last meet of my senior year, I ended on vault. And for vault, you get 2. So I did my first vault and it was really, really good. And sometimes, like, if the first one's really good, you just take that score and you don't do the other one. And my coach was like, take the score. And I'm like, absolutely not. I only get one piece of competitive gymnastics left. Like, I don't care if it was good. I'm doing the other vault. And then she looked at me and she was like, are you ready for your last piece of competitive gymnastics? And I remember looking at her being like, Colleen, how dare you say that to me? And now I'm, like, saluting the judge, sobbing. Like, so I actually had it on both sides where I had the injury, kind of slow burn end, and then I'm just a graduating senior, kind of quote unquote normal end.
Right, finishing your career.
Yeah.
That's hard. I think, like, something that I've kind of talked with other athletes, like, similar. So, like, you kind of had both stories where, like, you didn't have the closure at first.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't have the closure of, like, I knew this was my last, and then you got that. Which is, like, kind of similar to, like, the experience that I was in, or, like, experiences of athletes getting that, like, career or season ending injury where it's like you don't have that closure. And so it's like, I know it's super cliche, but it's like everyone's like, play every game like it's your last, or like whatever, but it's like, truthfully, like, until you go through an injury or a pandemic, like, whatever it is, like, you really don't know when it's your last. So, like, just something to kind of think about. Obviously it's not like something you want to be thinking about all the time, but, like, just being able to look back and think about, like, I know I gave it my all. Like, even though I didn't know it was going to be the last time, like, I know I left everything out there, and I can look back and be proud on that.
And I think it just goes to show that you don't really, like, what you think might be the end of it. You might get, you might get a, you know, another recap, and, you know, it always takes
something
me back,
else.
to, you know, she was probably in my first handful of athletes that I ever worked with. But she was a soccer player. She tore her ACL. Rehab, she was like, I'm coming back. I am doing this. I am going to be that athlete that, like, gets to tell my story of, I didn't let this end my career. 1 year to the day, more or less, re-tears the same ACL. And I just remember the first time I met with her, and I was like, you just need one good cry. Like, right now, anyway, you just need one good cry. And she, you know, she had her good cry, I remember. And she just was like, why? I did everything right. Why is this happening again? And then is it, now I get to choose, do I want to keep pursuing this?
Right.
And, she was a really good example of like, you don't always get the choice on it ending, but you get your choice to figure out a different path with your sport.
Right.
And she was such a good example of that.
And I think that on both ends of it, it's like thinking of that choice once you, however, if it is more of an ending where it's controlled versus those uncontrollables, I guess on that uncontrollable path, like you do have more of a choice than you realize.
Yeah.
And once you get past that kind of initial, oh my gosh, what is happening? Like, do you go and sit on the sidelines? Do you take time for yourself? Do you say, I want to go back to the sport? Do you try something else? Like there are so many options, and it's not that it doesn't make it suck any less, but like being able to see that and know that like it is your path in your life and you get to do what you want with it, which I think is kind of cool. But I think even going back to your point about like playing every game like it's your last.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like in the last couple months, like I work with a lot of club volleyball girls, and like all of them are just like cashed out. They're done. Like all of these people in the ends of their spring seasons, like I feel like everybody was just feeling this immense, like I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to move on. Like the team was hard. We didn't do as well as we thought. Coach sucks, whatever. It's another year gone.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I felt the same thing when I was playing, and I don't think I would have listened if anyone told me, but it's like, it will end, and it will get to that point where you look back and you're like, okay, why was I so miserable?
Yeah.
What could I have done differently, if you can, right? Because sometimes it's out of your control, but I do think that like we wish away these seasons, and we wish away like, oh, just 2 more tournaments, or oh, just got to get through nationals and then it'll be better next year. We'll go to tryouts, and it's like it's this constant loop, and you just get so sucked into it. And I just know with like the club volleyball world, it's really, really hard to just not see the light at the end of the tunnel and just not be able to be present with what you're doing. So I totally agree with play every game like it's your last, even if you're a little miserable.
Yeah, right? And I think it's one of
mundane.
those where we always try to remind our athletes of, you can hate every second of it, but I promise there's at least one positive that came out of it. You could have lost, you could have not played a single minute, you could have been miserable with your coaches, but like, did you get to hang out with your best friend on the bench for like 5 minutes, and you told a funny joke, and now that's going to be one of those like inside joke stories that you're like, I don't remember what happened that game, but remember when so-and-so did this or so-and-so said that. There are those moments that you don't necessarily want to be there, but there's still some good you can get out of those
for sure
tough games and situations.
I think even now it's funny because like thinking about our softball coach, we ran a lot. That was all we did a lot of the time, was running, and we hated it and complained about it. And I remember just like wishing for it to be over. And now every so often my friends, like my old teammates and I, will text each other and be like, hey, like remember when we used to run 25-second laps and like want to die? Like miss that.
Miss that.
Like,
miss you. Miss
like,
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we like hated it, but we got through it together. And I think that was the cool part, is that like we can look back on that now and like look back at what we went through and like maybe miss it a little bit, or maybe just appreciate the fact that we did it. So.
Yeah. And I think having those things to reminisce on does make kind of that shift out of your sport, if that's happening for you, like a little bit easier. But I think another big piece that we always try and emphasize, or at least I know I definitely do, is that like kind of on that identity piece. But I remember one of our owners, she mentioned it one time, because I forget what she was talking about, but Kim was like, I was working out this morning, and I think it was something to do, like someone said like, oh, you're a mom now, or like, you can't, I don't know, something about like her not being able to do something, or like not.
Which no one should ever tell Kim.
No,
that.
I'm pretty sure something around the lines of that. And she's like, no, like I'm a mom. Kim, one of our owners, she ran track at Miami, and she was a crazy running, amazing athlete from what I've heard. Never seen film, but hopefully one day. But she was like, absolutely not. She's like, I'm so offended actually, because like I still consider myself an athlete. Like I still train, I still run, I still do these things. Like my body is still capable of doing these things, not in the same capacity that I was in college, but like I still consider myself that athlete, even though I'm not in the like organized sport world anymore. And so I think that identity shift is so important if you're moving out of sport too. I actually had this conversation with one of my volleyball athletes yesterday, because she also tore her ACL twice. Crazy. I don't know what's going on with ACLs nowadays. Yeah. It's a whole nother podcast topic.
Yeah,
but,
seriously.
She was like, I'm deciding to not play for my high school this year, because, I mean, she wouldn't even be able to play. She's not going to get cleared till like November. So she would just be more of a manager, but she's like, I just don't even want to be a part of it. But she's like, I feel like when people ask me what I do or like what my hobbies are, like I can't say, oh, I play for, you know, the school's varsity team. And that's just like weird. And I'm like, you're still a volleyball player.
Yeah.
Like it's still who you are. That's still what you do. That's still what you're going to train as you come back to things, because she still wants to play club. She still wants to do other things. She's like, I might play high school next year for my senior year. But like, it was funny to see how she just didn't even see herself as that volleyball player anymore because she wasn't playing high school volleyball. It's like, no.
Yeah.
I still consider myself a volleyball player. I still consider myself an athlete. Like, I will be an athlete till I'm 85
Oh, yeah.
or however old I get to be. But, like, I think just understanding that even though you're not, like, that collegiate athlete, or maybe you're not in the high school system anymore, but, like, you can still identify as those things, even though it's just different. That's fine.
Absolutely.
Sure. And I think, like, kind of going off of that, too, like, that's, like, a transition that I was dealing with, too, right? Is, like, I'm still an athlete, whatever. But, like, I always loved the physical side of sports. Like, being in the gym, working hard, like, pushing myself, all of that. So then when I didn't have team workouts and when I didn't have a set workout plan and stuff, I was still going to the gym. But then it was that transition of, like, okay, I'm not training for my sport anymore. But, like, what do I enjoy doing?
Yeah,
like, I don't have to make myself go through these lifts. I was like, I can play around, I can try out different things, whether I want to go try like CrossFit or Pilates or like getting into cycling or whatever it might be. Like, you kind of have more freedom to find other ways of like exercise that still makes you feel like an athlete, but that maybe you enjoy a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And like maybe you can have fun with. So that's something to keep in mind too, like as you're going through these transitions, is like you have the freedom now to like play around with different things and like try out what you want to try out, and like maybe find something that you enjoy a little bit more, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I remember when I, kind of first stepped back from gymnastics, I used to be like, I quit. And my dad, I remember like rolling my eyes like so far into the back of my head, but he was like, you didn't quit, you just retired. And I remember like, and I've even said that to some athletes, and they absolutely do the same thing to me and like roll their eyes straight into the back of their skull. But, I think it's a really important, thing to say when Jason Kelsey decided not to play football again. We're not like, oh, he quit.
Right.
Like, no, he retired, and, there's still a lot that he is doing that keeps him as an athlete. He's always going to be an athlete, one of the best, not that I'm biased because he played for the Eagles or anything like that, but like, the narrative isn't, oh, he quit, like, shame him for it. It's, he retired, he moved on, and he's taking all those lessons with him. And I think it's such a subtle difference, but I think it's a really important difference in that verbiage.
I've heard I'm quitting, or I heard I'm giving up.
Ooh.
I'm giving up one is a tough one too. And I kind of go off the same thing of like, it's more about the choice you're making.
Right.
Like, yes, you may have an injury. Yes, you may have had a season-ending, pandemic, whatever. But like, or you're just choosing not to play in college after high school, whatever. No matter your talent level, but it's your choice, and you're not giving it up. You're just choosing to do a path that is going to be the best thing for you.
Yes,
Are
exactly.
you in theory giving it up? Like, yes, you're giving up the sport because you're not doing it anymore, but like you're not in theory giving up because it's too hard or because, you can't do it anymore because whatever. Like, if you're choosing not to play because you've had 3 crappy seasons and you don't want to go back to that anymore, you're not giving up because it's hard. You're giving up the sport that is having like a terrible mental toll on you.
Exactly.
Like,
I literally had this conversation with one of my baseball players on Tuesday. He's just one of those like really conscientious kids. He's funny as heck, let me tell you. But like, he and his parents just made the decision for him to step away from his summer league baseball because he's coming off, a pretty tough coach. The mom on the phone the other day was telling me some stories, and my jaw was dropping. Like, if you wrote that in a movie, I'd be like, oh, a coach would never do that. And she's like, oh no, I saw it with my own eyes. And I'm like, oh dang. But his big thing was, I feel like I'm quitting. Like, I'm not a quitter. I feel like I'm giving up. I feel like I'm letting my teammates down. And we walked through it, and I kind of said to him, I said, I want you to, you quit that team, but almost as like a badge of honor. I was like, I have seen you for the last year and a half work so hard to know your worth, know your identity, build this confidence. And now you just are, kind of looking that situation in the eye and being like, that team or this situation doesn't deserve all of this confidence. It's not worth giving up this confidence that I've worked so hard for. And he did all this little head tilt, and he's like, you know what? Like, I don't know if I'm totally on board with that idea yet, but I think I can get there.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, no, I feel like that is the toughest part, especially when you're just in a situation. And like, I even look back on my career and I'm like, why the heck did I stay with that so long? Why did I keep playing club? Like, my coaches were crazy. But it's like, again, you're in that moment and you don't see any other way, or it's like, you know, it's the norm to play club or to do summer ball. Like, it's not you don't see a lot of people choose not to do that and just train or do other things. Right, to break that
status quo if that's just what you do as a volleyball player.
But it doesn't have to be. Yeah. And I think that part, like, I definitely think that I'm giving up or I'm quitting is a really, really hard narrative nowadays, which, I mean, I'm sure it always has been. It's not any different. But I think that's a big piece of it, too, like, depending on where you're at and, like, if you are kind of moving out of that sport or that season for whatever reason, like, ask yourself, do I feel this way? Like, do I need to change that narrative? Do I need to think of it differently? But super important. I think, like, lastly, a piece that we wanted to touch on a little bit was the idea of being able to, like, depending on where you're at, like, if it's more of like the college, you know, you're coming out of college and you're ending that career in that way. High school might be a little different, but like, what are some of those next things I would encourage you to think about? So, like, is it, okay, now I'm, you know, graduating college, I'm going to grad school, I'm going to focus more on my career and figure out what that looks like. Am I, you know, in a good place in my relationship, and, like, my next phase is, like, engagement or, like, getting married, and, like, that part of more of a family piece. Is there something where you want to get into coaching and, like, start that career of your life? Like, you can even do that in high school, right? So it's like figuring out for you how you can take this new schedule that you're going to have, because I think that, honestly, like, you talk about lifting differently and stuff, it's going to be a challenge, and figuring out what that schedule can look like for you, but also being like, it's okay if I start to focus on new things. It's going to be different. It's going to feel maybe a little uncomfortable, but, like, you can take that same energy that you gave to your sport and now give it to your career. Now give it to your relationships. Now give it to your newfound workout routine, like, whatever it is that you feel passionate about, and take some time to find some new hobbies. Like, I don't know. A lot of people like crocheting nowadays. I don't know.
I was just like with an athlete the other day, and she's sitting there and she's crocheting a little pig, and I was like, good for you, girl. Like, she's like, do you want to see it? And I'm like, absolutely. That's awesome. Absolutely.
So I guess I think that too, because I know that can just be hard, and, like, you take your time to grieve the loss of that. I think that's maybe another important piece too, of, like, grieving that loss of that part of your life or that phase. Like, that's totally okay, but kind of circling it back, like, it's okay to be excited about the new things or, like, the new stuff that you can get into. 'Cause, like, again, I thought I had it all figured out when I went to grad school, and I thought I had those next steps in my career, but, like, it has blossomed. My life has blossomed into something I never would have imagined, which is amazing. And I think, like, all throughout high school and college, like, everything was so, like, I could prepare for the next semester. I could prepare for the next year. Like, I knew what that looked like because I was so caught up in that. So this whole phase of my life has been hard with just the craziness and the change. But I think all of the stuff that I've done with my college or my sport career has helped me be able to withstand all of the different things that have been thrown at me, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's something that, so when I was in grad school, I was a graduate assistant for student athlete development over at Ball State, which was really cool, but that's something that we worked on a lot with our athletes, was developing, like, those other sides of them as well, like you just said, and also, like, learning how to use your strengths as a student athlete. That's what I was just to your advantage. Say, because a lot of the time, especially once you start to reach that higher level of, like, Division I student athletes or, like, college athletes in general, some of them might not have actual, like, work experience that they can put on a resume, right? Because they've spent so much time and so many hours at their sport that they've just never had, like, jobs on the side. So there are still ways that you can market the skills that you've used within your sport, whether it's, like, time management, teamwork, organization, like, all of those things are still skills that employers are looking for, and that will pay off down the line. So, like, lean into those things too, find ways to, like, use them to your benefit as you're exploring those other things that you're interested in, or, like, your career, whatever your next path is. Like, again, you're still an athlete no matter what, so just bring that with you into whatever it is that you do. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that? Hobbies or anything?
No, I think
just be excited for life.
Yeah.
You got a whole life. Your life's not ending as much as it feels like maybe in that last game or that last moments that you weren't anticipating. But, like, I don't even remember if I really remember my last game. I don't know if that's earth-shattering to everybody, but I think I do. I
think it's one of those, like, yes, I remember it, and I actually had, like, a pretty good last
I did as well,
but you know, I've had a couple of people being like, especially for, when you get to the win and advanced phase of your sports, you inevitably are going to end your career unless you win it all.
Yeah.
You will end your sports career on a loss. And I have a lot of athletes that have a really hard time with that.
Yeah.
They're like, well, what am I going to say? Oh yeah, I had a great senior year, but we lost. And like, you don't have to pick that last game and say like, oh, what was your, how good was your team? You get to decide. We had this one game against this team where we were the underdog by a long shot. Like, you get to pick what the narrative and which stories you want to tell. It doesn't have to be the last one, good or bad.
Right. It's not about the win or the loss. It can be about the process.
Yes.
As we
We
always
love
say.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's a good probably finishing point there. Like, your last doesn't have to be the thing that defines you.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
I think even as your season, you had a bad last season, right? And you're like, well, I really did well my sophomore year. Tell that story.
Right.
Like, as a sophomore, this is what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like, these are, some highlights of my sports career. Nobody has to know what year it came from if you don't tell them.
Right.
Right. You control the narrative on what you want to look back on your sports career like.
For sure.
Sweet.
Nice.
Well, it was kind of fun to reminisce.
I know.
It's kind of nice.
Makes me want to like text all my
Coping.
teammates
I
and
know.
be like, hey, miss you, don't miss this, but
I
miss
know.
you.
Oh gosh, that's fun. Well, hopefully everyone has a great summer. Hopefully
Yes.
everyone, with amongst their training, everything else. One of our next episodes is going to be a little bit about motivation. So hopefully that'll resonate with people as well, depending on where you're at with your summer and what you're doing. So we will see you next time.
Bye.
See ya.
If you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow the Athlete Cafe on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.